Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Off-Farm Income Podcast. Thank you very much for joining us here on our YouTube channel for episode number 799. Well, I will tell you what, I always am blown away when I get to interview FFA students who are involved in agri-science research, and today's interview is another great example of that. I'm going to be speaking with Atticus Humphrey, coming from Sanger High School in Sanger, California, now at Fresno State University, and he's going to be talking to us all about the research he started all the way back, even before his freshman year of high school, as well as how he completed his associate's degree before he ever set foot at Fresno State University. Did it just right during the summer between high school and college. Really cool interview. Got that all coming up for you and more. We'll start it right now. Joining me today is Atticus Humphrey, and he is coming to us from Fresno State University in Fresno, California, where he is studying plant science. Now, he is a former chapter treasurer from the Sanger High School in Sanger, California, just down the road from Fresno State, and he's joining us here today. Atticus, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me come here to do an interview today.
You bet. I was thrilled as I was looking through different people who had been proficiency winners, gold, silver, bronze, national finalists, all that type of stuff last year, to see somebody from Sanger. That is my mom's hometown. So she preceded you at Sanger High School by, 4 or 5 decades, something like that. So,
wow.
Yeah, that's quite a time span. I'm sure it's changed quite a bit since then. But I spent a lot of my childhood in Sanger. I don't know if you're familiar with Highland Avenue as you're heading towards Fresno.
Yep, I'm very familiar.
Well, our family's farm was located on Highland. There's still, I think, 40 acres left. My cousins have it. And but I grew up running around out there on Highland Avenue through the grapevines and all of that. So a lot of fun. A lot of fun growing up as a kid and being around Sanger. So excited to speak with you and dredge up the memories of Fresno County.
Well, thank you very much.
You bet. Well, let's do this. I'd love to start off by just asking you a few questions just about you so our audience can get to know who they're listening to. Is that all right with you?
That's fine by me.
Okay. So you are 20 years old right now, and you are a senior at Fresno State, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so let's talk about this for a minute, because I do a lot of interviews with FFA students, and as dual credit options in high school become more and more prevalent, I'm hearing quite a bit about it on the show. And of course, students in the FFA are taking advantage of dual credit quite a bit. And in your case, you really have. So you've been at Fresno State for 2 years, and you are a senior. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. How did you accomplish this? How are you able to, accelerate your college studies so quickly?
Well, so like you said, I was in a dual enrollment program, and this program was made possible thanks to very generous contributions of the Resnick family and the wonderful corporation. They're a California-based company,
Mm-hmm.
and they produce predominantly fruit and almonds along their entire range of brands. And what they did at Sanger High, and they've done this at several other schools in the Valley as well, and what they did was they provided 2 pathway programs, one for ag mechanics, another for plant science, which was the one I took. And students could enroll in these programs, take high school credit and college credit at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And for the plant pathway, or for the plant science pathway, at the end of the program, if the student had completed all the coursework, they would be eligible for their associate's degree in plant science because of how many credits they took.
Okay, that's fantastic. So when did you first start taking dual credit courses? Did you do that your freshman year, or was it when you were a junior, sophomore, something like that?
It was right before I started my freshman year, so it was the summer in between 8th grade and freshman year. I took my first college course.
Wow.
And I took my last college course for Reedley College, which I was enrolled there.
Uh-huh.
The summer after my senior year.
No kidding. So you actually took your first college course before you ever took your first high school course.
Yep.
That's pretty amazing. Now, I want to ask you, are you an advanced student, or is this open to any student who wanted to get this aggressive about college courses?
Initially, the program was open to any students because the goal was just to get people to sign up.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, I think they started doing a bit of a vetting process.
Okay.
Just to make sure that they have enough seats in the class available for everybody.
Okay.
But I'm not 100% sure about that.
Okay.
It still might just be completely open enrollment.
Now, you talked about the donation, or the sponsorship, I should say, of the Resnick family. Did they cover the cost of the tuition for you to take the dual credit courses, or how did their sponsorship play into this?
So what they did is they basically covered, they gave Sacred High a grant that covered all of the expenses. So that was tuition, books, and they even put money towards field trips, or students taking trips up to colleges and outside of Fresno County. And so that way we as their students could get kind of a more of a well-rounded view of places outside of Fresno, because many of us didn't necessarily get the opportunities to travel.
Okay.
Very often.
And did you take advantage of that? Did you do some traveling and some observing of agriculture in different areas?
Yeah. So I took trips up to Davis and Cal Poly, and my freshman year, they offered a trip up to Yosemite Valley for a week over spring break. For kind of let's say it was the program was that trip was, the purpose of it was kind of let's get everybody out of the valley for a little bit, and you guys can go have basically a vacation. And so they were very generous when it came to that.
Okay. So, for example, when you went to like UC Davis, what kind of agriculture did you observe there that you don't have in Fresno County?
Well, because Fresno County is one of the most productive and one of the most diverse agricultural locations in California, there wasn't so much anything in Davis that was necessarily different. But at Davis, they do have some very advanced laboratories that we got to tour as well that are tied to their agriculture, like their viticulture lab and some others.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting. Now, so I want to make sure that we're understanding this correctly. You took your first college course the summer between 8th grade and your freshman year of high school, and then you completed your last college course for your associate's degree during the summer between high school graduation and then beginning your first semester at Fresno State University. Is that correct?
Yes.
And this was all paid for, and so you entered into Fresno State with an associate's degree, half of your bachelor's degree completed, paid for, free and clear. Is that right?
That is correct.
That is incredible. I want to really hone in on that, just because in this day and age where people are talking about student loan debt and how expensive it is to go to college and all of those types of things, here you are able to get half of your college done before you even graduate high school. It's all paid for already. And you did it through Reedley Community College, which has a reduced tuition. So even if you didn't have the grant from the Resnick family, even if you were paying for that tuition, you'd be paying for that at a much reduced rate because you were doing it as a dual credit course. Is that correct?
I'm actually the pathway program at Sanger High wasn't the only thing that the Resnick family has done. They've also done several other high schools in Delano. They built themselves their own high school with programs of its own. And I want to say there's actually a few programs that they offer that are outside of agriculture as well. And so like I said before, these people have been very helpful to a lot of the people in the valley.
That's fantastic. Wow, what a great story, and what a great way to get a head start and to get out ahead of this. Okay, so how long have you been part of the FFA?
So I became part of the FFA my freshman year. It was kind of a moment of, here, sign this, and you're going to this competition this weekend. I'm like, all right.
Okay.
and I'm still part of the FFA. I'm actually an alumni now, and I'm looking forward to continuing to help and support my FFA chapter as I continue on in life and in my career.
That's great. Now, did you, or I guess I should say, do you live on a farm, or do you live in town, or maybe something like in the middle of those two?
I am still living with my family right now,
Uh-huh.
and we live on a very small farm. It's only 2 acres or
Okay.
2.5 acres, and we raise chickens, sheep, and we have over 100 pomegranate trees
Awesome.
that we have on our property as well.
Very cool. Yeah, the stuff you guys grow down there is really interesting. All the citrus and things like pomegranates. It's really fun to come and look around. All the grapes. Okay, so this is what I want to ask you. You started in this program, this agricultural pathways program, sponsored by the Resnick family and their corporation, between your 8th grade year and your freshman year of high school. So how did you know at that point that you wanted to go into an agricultural pathway?
Well, actually, I didn't really know for sure what I wanted to do. It was kind of a moment of, they're offering to help me pay for a little bit of my college. All right, I'll take advantage of that.
Okay.
And from there, it became, so this is what FFA is. Oh, you mean it's not all about showing animals? I could do things like agri-science fair,
Mm-hmm.
or these CDE teams with meats evaluation, public speaking competitions, that kind of thing. And it slowly grew from me having a very narrow understanding of what agricultural opportunities there were,
Mm-hmm.
into, this is what agriculture is. It's more than just a farmer planting seeds or a student showing livestock at the fair. It is heavily involved in science. It is heavily involved in research. And so it was very much a learning process, and certainly not something that happened for me overnight.
Yeah, very good. That's great. And so obviously, you kind of got brought into it by this opportunity for you to get some college taken care of, and then you found the FFA, and then you became an officer. So it sounds to me like you really engaged in the FFA while you were part of it at Sanger High.
Yeah, and it was one of the most fulfilling and most fun things I did in high school was become part of this FFA group that really does a lot in our valley and
Mm-hmm.
has helped support a lot of students in their future careers as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, I know you had several FFA advisors there that helped you along the way. Would you mind just letting everybody know who those folks were?
So the main advisor for my chapter was Audrey Benami, but we also had Paul Potstada, Laura Hansen, Larry Paredes, Tony Heron, and Greg Ravey. And both Mr. Paredes and Mr. Ravey actually moved on to their own schools. Ravey still teaches in Fresno at a high school called Clovis East. And Larry Paredes, I want to say he's actually teaching now at a college. And so those were my advisors. They were the ones who really got me involved in agriculture and involved in the FFA.
Awesome. Well, thank you for acknowledging them, Atticus. And really quick, I want to acknowledge a couple great sponsors and supporters of the FFA, of agriculture, and of this show. And, of course, I want to talk about Lacrosse Footwear, everybody. You can find them at lacrossefootwear.com. And I'll tell you what, we use Lacrosse boots every day on our farm here in Idaho. whether it's frozen, whether it's muddy, or whether I'm just out irrigating. And they are rugged boots that have stood up to the test of the work I do here. We use the Alpha Range boots from Lacrosse, and we hope you will as well. And I always love to mention Lacrosse boots while we do our FFA episodes, because Lacrosse Footwear is proud to support the FFA by annually sponsoring 15 scholarships along with 100 jackets as part of the Give the Gift of Blue program. So we hope you will support them as well. You can find them at lacrossefootwear.com. And of course, Powder River Livestock Handling Equipment, everybody. Out here in the West, we've always known about Powder River. If you are not in the West, it's time for you to learn as well, man. They make just fantastic squeeze chutes, sweep tubs, panels, runways, whatever you need to handle your large livestock. They were born and bred dealing with some of the roughest stock you can find in the United States, coming in off the rangeland a couple times a year to be handled by people. And they built this equipment for those cattle. And if they can handle those cattle, well, they can certainly handle yours. So please let your local farm and ranch retailer know you'd like to see Powder River in their sales yard so you can buy the finest in livestock handling equipment, and check out everything they've got to offer you at powderriver.com. All right. Well, Atticus, this is fascinating already. Now, it's time I want to ask you about your supervised agricultural experience. So what were you doing for that throughout high school?
So my SAE project consisted of a series of agri-science fair projects, or agri-science fair research studies. And from my freshman to my junior year, I worked with poultry in reducing pollution in their manure through means of a variety of feed supplements. And then my senior year, I switched over to pesticides and entomology, which is what I'm actually going to school for now. And I studied selective pesticides and their impacts on beneficial insects.
Okay.
And so that was my SAE project, and that was my SAE experience.
Very cool. What got you interested in agri-science and in research?
Well, I've always been interested in research. I had actually done several science fair projects at regional, county, and state level. Mm-hmm. For a few years before I got to high school. But then once I got into high school, it was, FFA does its own version of science fair, so like, sign me up. I'll do that. And
okay.
Since then, I've competed at both the state and national levels for several years as well.
Very cool. How did you choose your first project with the chicken manure?
That one, I was actually, that started several years prior to high school when I was in 8th grade, or a year prior to high school when I was in 8th grade. I learned about these new opportunities that were happening in Europe, where large-scale farms were experimenting with ways to reduce the pollution in chicken manure. Mm-hmm. And then also there's been an effort on the East Coast where they get a lot of rain and have issues with nutrient pollution runoff going into drinking water.
Okay.
And waterways like Lake Erie or the Chesapeake Bay. And they also are looking for ways to control the pollution, the nutrient pollution from nitrates, phosphates, coming off of livestock manure.
Okay.
And so there have been a variety of attempts to control this manure, from applying certain chemicals to the manure, like I forgot what. It's been a while since I've done any current research, but they've looked at ways of like applying chemicals to manure, allowing the manure to be stored up inside enclosed storage, or modifying chicken diets. Okay. And so I decided that, why not? I would like to try that. That's very interesting to me. And so I decided to test a feed supplement called protease enzyme, which is an enzyme naturally found in pineapples and other fruit, other tropical fruits. And I decided to, why not test that to see if it can help break down some of the chicken's food, help them digest the food a little better, and essentially make them a little more efficient and have their manure, or reduce the level of pollution in their manure.
Okay. And so what were your findings?
So I found that protease works very well, and I tested it in a variety of ways. I tested it as a feed supplement, and then I also combined it with several manure additives, and I actually found that the feed supplement itself has a very significant impact on reducing the pollution in the chicken manure. And so that is one possible solution to the pollution problem along the East Coast.
And you talked about efficiencies. So were you measuring, I guess, the amount of manure that was being produced, or were you measuring what was inside the manure that was actually produced?
I was measuring what was inside the manure itself, not so much the volume of the manure.
So how do you do that? I mean, how do you, in high school, how do you figure out what chemicals and what residuals are actually in the chicken's manure?
Well, there's a variety of laboratory tests that I can use. One of the early ones that I used was a HPLC, which is a high pressure liquid chromatography, which is usually used for water testing, but I figured out a way to make a slurry of the manure in a sense and run that through. It worked sort of, but then later on I found a soils testing lab, which is called Della Valley Labs, and they're local.
Mm-hmm.
And they were able to take the manure, run it through a method that's traditionally used for soil, and they were able to analyze my samples for nitrates, phosphates, and chemicals along those, or pollutants along those lines.
Okay, very cool. All right, so I haven't even got to what you're doing with pesticides yet, so let's talk about that. How did your interest shift over to pesticides and some of the chemicals that are used in agriculture?
Well, there was a point along with the animal studies that I did that was like, okay, it started feeling like it was getting a little too repetitive, and that maybe I should branch off into something new. While I was on an internship up in Fireball, believe it or not, with the wonderful company, and I found out that during drought years, they struggled with spider mites. And the most common way to control spider mites is to use either pesticides or soaps or oils. And I wanted to test if what they were using had a negative impact on some of the more beneficial insects that also reside in the same environment. And so I designed an experiment where I tested a chemical called Apollo, or it's a pesticide that goes by the trade name of Apollo, on the western predatory spider mite, which is a beneficial insect in almonds, and to see if it was as selective as it was advertised.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that the pesticide isn't necessarily as selective as it is first advertised. And although I would certainly need much more rigorous testing to make sure that my findings were correct.
Okay. But you have some initial findings that kind of are steering you in the direction you want to go.
Yes.
Okay.
But because all of my studies were very small scale, very any of my findings would need to be tested at a much more rigorous level.
Sure. Absolutely.
before I say, use this, don't do that,
Right.
kind of thing.
Before you're making recommendations.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay. Now, interesting. So this is what you're continuing with in your plant science major at Fresno State, correct?
In a sense, yes. I've actually gone into genetics and genetic modification.
Okay.
Um, I'm currently working with navel orangewort, which is a pest in a variety of fruits and nuts in the valley, predominantly almonds and pistachios. And me and the professor I'm working with, we are working on a transgenesis study in which we're trying to induce sterility among moths using a genetic method rather than the traditional radiation method,
Okay.
and thus being able to do sterile release
Okay.
for pest control.
Very interesting, man. This is we're getting way above my head here. I got to tell you, Atticus, but that's okay. I'll let you guide me through this interview. So, where do you want this all to take you? Are you going to continue on to a master's degree or PhD level?
I'm thinking about it. In fact, I'm looking at possibly going into a master's degree program in Purdue.
Okay.
I think I'm going to apply for it in the fall and hopefully have, or when the applications open, I think they open in the fall. Hopefully I can get a master's degree at Purdue University in entomology and genetics.
That was cool. And then, what do you want to do ultimately? Have you kind of decided that? I mean, I know you're just 20 years of age so far, so no pressure. But do you have a career path kind of chosen?
Yeah, I would like to go into genetics and genetic modification for pest control.
Mm-hmm.
The field, although it's relatively new in relation to using genetic methods, it does offer a lot of opportunity and potential for innovation, which, of course, I am all for that, and so I would like to make that my career.
Very cool. All right. Well, that is great, and my goodness, I can't imagine the amount of chemistry and different things that you have to study that I could never even pass the course in. You probably excel in all of it, Atticus.
Well, actually, it's you'd be surprised at how relatively simple a lot of this stuff is. It's not because it's like, oh, I have experience in it, so it's simple to me, but it's actually surprisingly easy to work on. The tools in the lab I'm using are actually very rudimentary, and you'd be surprised how almost caveman-like in a way a lot of this research is being conducted.
Yeah.
Not to say that it's being poorly conducted, it's just that we don't necessarily have the most advanced tools yet.
Yeah, that's what I always think about is cavemen with genetic modification. Those two things just go hand in hand. No, I'm just teasing you on that, Atticus. Well, tell me about your proficiency awards. I know that you've competed both at the state and national level. How have you been recognized there?
So for my proficiency awards, I placed first at state, and then I applied for nationals. I finished in the top 4. Unfortunately, I was not in the top 3, so I never got to actually compete at the national convention. But I got pretty far for proficiency, and one of the farthest I think Sanger's ever gotten, at least in a long time.
That's fantastic.
For a proficiency application.
Well, congratulations on the state win and also being top 4 in the nation. I mean, it's pretty incredible, and I know that you'd love to have been on that stage. But when you are top 4, do they consider you a gold placement or a gold winner? Is that what they do, or how did they title it?
Yeah, so I was considered a gold placement.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I cannot remember off the top of my head how many. If it was 1 through 4 or 1 through 10, I got gold placement. But yeah, I was gold placement.
Well, I think it's a real testament to you, but also just to the the quality of research and agri-science projects that are going on in the FFA. I mean, we're hearing all about these amazing things that you're doing, and like I said, I can't keep up. And then there are, there's other students out there around the nation who are right there with you. I think it's a real testament to the quality of education and projects that are going on in the FFA.
Yeah, it was. I was amazed at how in depth and how thorough the quality of the education that I got from because of my advisors and observing friends that I made in other chapters and how well and their advisors were doing to making sure that people were being educated about agriculture, not just saying, oh, this is just for farmers, but rather, no, this is where we set the industry standard for a lot of things in the U.S. We are the ones on the cutting edge.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you're 100% correct. Well, Atticus, this has been fascinating. I would love to ask your advice for other students, maybe students who are in the 8th grade right now, or maybe just coming into the FFA, when it comes to starting early in college and when it comes to getting involved in research. If they're kind of questioning whether or not they've got the skills to do that and to pull off what you've pulled off, or at least pull off part of what you've pulled off, what would you say to them if they were to say, how do I do it?
If they're interested in agri-science, by all means, go for it. You'd be amazed at how many resources are available, whether it's advisors or local labs or even college-level professors who are absolutely willing to help you on their projects. And if they're just wanting to see what is ag or what is the FFA, go for it. Go explore it. It's an amazing experience. It has really helped me, and I'd recommend that everybody at least try it for a little while, even if ultimately that student might not necessarily go into the ag industry. Just try it. See what they think, and at the very least, you'll end with an understanding about agriculture, and you'll make a lot of good friends along the way.
Excellent, great advice, Atticus. Really a thrill to speak with you. So happy to talk with you coming out of Sanger. Very cool for me. Really appreciate you coming on today.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed the interview.
Well, thank you for being here, everybody. Really appreciate you joining us here on the Off-Farm Income Podcast. And as always, enjoy your journey to the ultimate lifestyle business, agriculture.